Love is not merely a feeling, fleeting, flippant, and fragile. It's a phenomenon etched deep into the archetypal substrate of being itself. And sometimes, just sometimes, there's a kind of love that strikes with such force, such symmetry, such uncanny alignment that you can't help but suspect this wasn't random. No, this was woven into the fabric of your existence long before you ever met. Now, I'm not talking about infatuation, not lust, not the shallow echo chamber of mutual validation that so many people mistake for love today. I'm talking about a collision of souls that awakens something ancient in you, something eternal, a love that appears not merely as an emotional high, but as a calling, a cosmic rendezvous with meaning. When you encounter this kind of love, the world itself begins to conspire in its favor. Chaos begins to cohere, patterns emerge. You find yourself drawn to someone not by mere chance, but by the very gravitational pull of your own becoming. So in this talk, I want to walk you through 5 signs, 5 markers that this love, this relationship, this union was not accidental. It was written into your destiny. And if you can see them, you'll never see love the same way again. There are moments in life so improbable, so surreal in their alignment, that they force you to question whether chance is really at the helm. You find yourself in the presence of someone who seems to have stepped out of the pages of your private mythology, someone who embodies the pattern you've been unconsciously yearning for without even knowing it. And when that person appears, against all odds, something inside you wakes up. There's an eerie familiarity, as if you've known them for centuries. You begin to notice how the universe had to twist and contort itself to bring the two of you into the same space at the same time, in the same emotional condition to even recognize each other. And it's not romanticism, it's not delusion, it's reality viewed properly through the lens of meaning. You see, the modern world has trained you to look at everything as arbitrary, to reduce human relationships to algorithms, swipes, and schedules. But beneath the surface of that cynicism lies an ancient truth that some meetings are divinely appointed, that certain intersections of time and soul carry a weight, a gravity that cannot be manufactured or faked. You could have lived 1,000 different lives, made 1,000 different choices, and still something greater would have found a way to cross your path with theirs. Why? Because when something is written into your story at a mythic level, it does not abide by ordinary rules. It does not obey logic or probability. It obeys something higher. Call it God, destiny, the Logos, the unfolding order of being itself. When that meeting happens, you feel it before you understand it. You feel the hair stand up on the back of your neck. You feel time slow down, if only for a moment. The ordinary becomes charged with significance. What should have been a mundane encounter instead becomes a threshold, a doorway, and you cross it. Often without knowing what you're stepping into, but some part of you knows. Your intuition leaps ahead of your intellect, and you sense, often in a hushed, reverent way, this matters. And don't misunderstand, just because it's destined doesn't mean it will be easy. In fact, destiny often carries with it a tremendous weight. The Greeks called it fate, and they didn't see it as optional or convenient. They saw it as necessary. To meet someone by divine design is to inherit a responsibility. You must care for that bond. You must rise to the level of the story being told. And if you try to run, if you try to deny the encounter, you will suffer. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because you've stepped out of alignment with your own becoming. So, when your paths cross against all odds, when your soul recognizes another not with infatuation but with deep, unshakable meaning, pay attention. The story of your life may have just turned a page, and if you're awake, if you're honest, if you're brave, you'll see it for what it is: destiny arriving right on time. When love is written into your destiny, it does not arrive to lull you into comfort or to keep you safe in your little bubble of self-preservation. It arrives to disturb you, to rupture your illusions, and to call you into a deeper, more truthful version of yourself. This kind of love doesn't flatter your ego, it bypasses it entirely. It's not about charm or aesthetics or the superficial resonance of shared hobbies. No, it's about awakening. It's about encountering someone whose presence stirs your very soul. They don't just walk into your life, they illuminate it. They shed light on things in you that were previously buried or ignored, things you may have been too afraid to face, and that can be disorienting, even painful, but it's also deeply necessary because so many people sleepwalk through their lives, not fully alive, not fully honest with themselves. They cling to routines, distractions, and socially acceptable narratives about who they are and what they want. But destiny doesn't play that game. Destiny shatters illusions. And when a love is part of that divine pattern, it will not allow you to remain asleep. The person you're drawn to in this way may challenge you more than anyone else ever has. They will speak truths you're not used to hearing. They will reflect parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable, not out of cruelty, but because they can see you. Truly see you. And the moment you realize that you are being fully seen and not rejected is the moment your transformation begins. There's something ancient about this kind of connection. It feels archetypal, like the meeting of two storylines that were always meant to intertwine. It's not just personal, it's symbolic. You begin to feel like you're participating in something larger than yourself, something almost mythological in nature. This person doesn't just complement you, they activate you. And what they awaken in you isn't always pleasant. Sometimes it's rage or grief or longing that you've kept buried under years of survival strategies. But alongside those emotions comes something else, vision. You start to see who you could be, who you must become if you are to stand in the full truth of this love. That's the paradox. Real, destined love is not about feeling safe. It's about becoming strong enough to face what you've avoided. The other person may not even try to change you, and yet their existence demands your transformation. That's how you know it's real, because the more you open your heart to them, the more you realize you're not merely falling in love with them, you're also falling into the depths of your own soul. You're being called, not just to love another, but to finally love yourself enough to change. This is the kind of love that breaks you open only to rebuild you. It leaves no room for mediocrity. It asks everything of you and offers in return the rarest of gifts, the chance to become whole. There's a reason why the ancient myths speak so often of trials, ordeals, and the confrontation with the shadow when describing love and union. Because true love, destined love, doesn't just meet you in your light. It meets you in your darkness. It steps into the parts of your psyche that you've worked so hard to hide, the places you'd rather keep sealed off, even from yourself. And when it finds those places, it does not shame you. It does not turn away. It holds a mirror up to you and says, "Look." And that is where the real work begins. When you're in a love that's part of your destiny, you quickly realize it's not always smooth. You'll be triggered. You'll be tested. And not because the person is trying to harm you, but because both of your wounds are alive. And now they're in conversation with each other. One person's abandonment fear meets the other's fear of engulfment. One's insecurity stokes the other's anger. And suddenly you're not just in love, you're in conflict. But that conflict is sacred because it carries with it the potential for deep transformation. It's not destruction, it's refinement. See, this is what people misunderstand. They think that when things get hard, it must not be meant to be. But sometimes it's hard because it's meant to be, because the relationship has the strength, the depth, and the divinely ordained structure to hold the weight of both your shadows. You're not just falling for someone's light, you're learning to stand in the fire of their pain, their history, their brokenness, and in doing so, you're asked to confront your own. That's why destiny-bound relationships feel so intense. They're not designed to be a vacation from reality. They are reality in its most raw and refined form. And here's the miracle. When two people are brave enough to do this shadow work together, the relationship doesn't decay. It evolves. You begin to create a new container, a sacred space where both your wounds and your strengths can coexist. The very things that once triggered pain begin to foster intimacy. The patterns that once created conflict now serve as entry points into deeper understanding. You stop trying to fix each other and you start facing yourselves. In a relationship like this, forgiveness is not a one-time act. It becomes a rhythm. Humility is not an exception, it's a practice. And love is not just an emotion, it's a discipline. It's what holds the two of you together when everything else, fear, pride, ego, tries to pull you apart. And what's astonishing is that even in the messiest moments, there is a kind of knowing we are meant to be in this, not in some naive, romanticized way, but in a soul-level awareness that says, this person is part of my becoming. That's the mark of destiny. Not that everything goes right, but that even when it goes wrong, the story keeps pulling you forward, together. When love is aligned with destiny, it doesn't merely inspire passion, it inspires purpose. It's not content with chemistry alone, it demands congruence. That means your lives aren't just emotionally connected, they are aimed in the same direction. Your core values, your convictions, your sense of responsibility and meaning, they begin to line up with startling precision. And that's not something you fabricate or force. It's not something you negotiate into existence. It's something that's revealed. You see, when you're walking your own path with honesty, when you're taking responsibility for your life, confronting your flaws, working towards something meaningful, you begin to radiate a kind of psychological signal, a frequency of purpose. And when another person is doing the same, the convergence becomes almost magnetic. You look at them and you don't just feel attraction, you feel recognition. You realize this person is walking the same uphill road. They're fighting similar dragons. They're driven not by vanity or comfort, but by a hunger to build, to contribute, to transform. And when you join lives with someone like that, you're not just entering a relationship, you're entering a mission. There's a profound steadiness that emerges in this kind of union. You don't feel the need to constantly entertain one another or fill the space with noise. You're not bound by the latest thrill or novelty. Instead, your relationship becomes a shared fortress, one built on direction, not distraction. The conversations you have are not about what are we doing this weekend, but what are we building over the next decade? And that kind of alignment brings peace. Not the peace of stagnation, but the peace of clarity. What makes this alignment so powerful is that it preserves individuality. You're not clones. You don't collapse into each other or lose yourselves in the relationship. You remain distinct, sharpened by your own vision, strengthened by your own challenges. But when your lives run parallel with harmony and intention, it's as if you're two rivers flowing side by side, distinct, yet moving toward the same ocean. And you feel it in your bones. This isn't just compatibility. This is calling. This kind of union produces a rare synergy. You encourage each other, not just emotionally, but structurally. You support each other's goals. You challenge each other's weaknesses. You expand one another's vision. You don't merely survive together. You thrive because you're each committed to something beyond yourselves. And this is key. When your love is oriented around shared purpose, it becomes resilient. Because now, you're not just serving each other, you're serving the mission, you're fighting for something, and that something gives the relationship a sacred durability. That's how you know it's destiny. Not because it's easy, not because it's perfect, but because your lives, your values, and your visions lock into place like puzzle pieces from a design you didn't even realize was being drawn. And when that happens, love becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a structure you can build a life upon. When love is written into your destiny, time itself begins to behave differently. The ordinary rules of emotional pacing no longer apply. You meet this person and things move, not necessarily in speed, but in depth. Conversations reach profound levels within days. Silences feel full rather than awkward. It's as though you've resumed something rather than begun it. There's a sense of timelessness, of recognition beyond memory. You can't quite explain why this person feels so familiar, only that they do. And in that familiarity, there's peace, not the fragile peace of fantasy, but the steady assurance that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You start to notice how time before them feels like preparation. Every heartache, every failure, every painful lesson suddenly takes on new meaning. It all feels like it was moving you, however slowly and painfully, toward this. That's how destiny works. It redeems the past by giving it purpose. The person who's meant for you doesn't arrive to erase your story. They arrive to complete it, not in the sense of dependency, but in the sense of alignment. Their presence brings coherence to your life, like a final piece snapping into place in a puzzle you didn't realize was unfinished. You may have experienced love before, infatuation, obsession, even devotion, but this is different. It's not loud, desperate, or anxious. It doesn't consume you like a fire. It steadies you like a foundation. And yet, despite the calm, it's not dull. It's not static. In fact, it's alive in a way that quieter, lesser loves never were. There's a quiet awe that flows through every interaction. You feel a deep respect, not just for who this person is, but for the way they carry their pain, the way they've survived, the way they show up with integrity. You admire them, not from a place of idolization, but from a place of deep reverence. And they do the same for you. What's extraordinary is how natural it feels. You don't have to audition for their affection. You don't have to manipulate, perform, or shrink yourself. You are loved not in spite of your complexity, but because of it. Your intensity doesn't scare them. Your vulnerability doesn't make them flinch. They stay, not out of obligation, but out of deep, intuitive knowing. This is where I'm meant to be. And that, right there, is the signature of destiny. Not force, but flow. You begin to grow together, not just emotionally, but spiritually. You begin to heal, not by erasing the scars of the past, but by seeing them in the light of love and acceptance. And as time passes, the relationship doesn't wear down. It deepens. The more you reveal, the more intimacy is created. The more life tests you, the stronger the bond becomes. This love doesn't fade. It evolves, and through it, you are both becoming more than you were, more honest, more courageous, more whole. That is the final proof. When time doesn't erode the love, but refines it. When every season draws you closer, not apart, that's how you know. It was written from the beginning.